What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about the misconceptions of an epidural. So if you guys don't know already, I did just give birth recently, about 7 months ago. Now almost 8 months ago. In my birthing experience, I did have an epidural, and there were so many things that I thought I knew that I had no idea about until it was time to get an epidural. So if you are about to give birth or you're just curious about what an epidural is and how all of that works, make sure you guys stay tuned. I'm getting right into it. So first things first, over all of these years, I always thought that the epidural was this big shot because everyone is always talking about this big needle. There's a huge needle. It's a big needle in your back. So I literally thought that the epidural was the doctor taking a needle this long, sticking it inside of your back and numbing you from the waist down. And you're just gonna stay numb. Incorrect. So actually, the epidural is more of a catheter type situation, and there's many different steps in actually obtaining an epidural. And if you guys watch my birthing vlog, you guys will actually see the anesthesiologist giving my epidural, but it's a little bit of a weird angle so you can't see every detail. But basically, they give you a numbing shot first. Okay, and after that numbing shot, they then stick that like long needle inside of your back, but by that point you don't feel it, and they streamline the catheter through your spine, and then they inject your spine with medication consistently throughout the night. It's not one shot. And so I was like mind blown with that. And that brings me to my misconception number 2, which is thinking that an epidural is extremely painful. So leading up until the time that I was going to give birth, I was actually very nervous and scared to get an epidural because I didn't want that to hurt, because I knew I was going to already be in all this pain. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to hurt. And then I have to sit extremely still, and oh my gosh, it's going to be painful. And y'all, I kid you not. Now listen, I don't know if it's because I was already in so much pain from the contractions, but that did not hurt at all. The first shot, like I said, is a numbing shot, and it literally just felt like a little bit of a pinch in your back, and then you're kind of numb. So you can feel the epidural shot going into your back to release the catheter, but it doesn't hurt. You just can feel it because it's like pressure, you know? So yeah, it does not hurt at all, in my experience, at least. Misconception number 3 is if you even breathe wrong, if you move an inch, they will paralyze you. And although of course there's a needle going in your back, there is, you know, risk involved in that. It's just not that, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh my gosh, I cannot move a single inch or meter and they will just freaking paralyze me. They'll just, it's not that deep. I will say, of course, you do have to stay still while you're getting the epidural, but it's not very difficult. You don't have to hunch completely over and crunch your baby. You literally just, I sat there at the edge of the bed, I held a pillow, and he injected me with the shot. It was that easy and that simple. And it took maybe 5 minutes. Really easy. The next misconception about an epidural is that there is a cutoff time to get the epidural while you're in labor. So leading up into labor, I heard so many stories like, oh, you have to get the epidural before you're 7 centimeters, because once you hit 7 centimeters, you cannot get the epidural anymore. And so I was like, damn, I don't want to miss my opportunity. Like if I wait too long, then I'm stuck having to give birth without the epidural. That is not true, at least from my hospital. You can request an epidural at any stage of labor, obviously before you're pushing, as long as you're able to sit still. So if your contractions are so bad that you can't sit still, then they're not going to suggest you get an epidural, because of course you do have to stay still to get the epidural. But for my hospital specifically, and I do believe this is all hospitals, you can be up to 10 centimeters and get the epidural. So don't let anyone tell you that you cannot get it. Your centimeters, dilation, or anything like that has absolutely nothing to do with the cutoff time to get an epidural. Another really big misconception, which really almost deterred me from getting an epidural, is that you have to push on your back laying down while you're on the epidural. That is not true. It is completely false. While you have an epidural, you still have a little bit of mobility. You can't walk around, but you do still have a little bit of mobility to where you are not limited to only pushing on your back, especially once the epidural starts to wear off a little. So for me, while I have my epidural, I pushed in 3 main specific positions. I did push on my back while crunched up. I pushed on my sides, and then I did a little bit of pushing in a squatting position, but that just it wasn't working for me. But yeah, you do not have to lay on your back. That is completely false. Another misconception I want to talk about is the fact that I thought I would be completely dead from my nipples down. Like I thought I would not feel anything. I thought it was going to be completely dead and numb, and I was just going to be like loosey-goosey. Now, when you first get that epidural, when it's fresh in your back, yeah, you're numb. Just legs just mean nothing, very numb. But the way the epidural works is very interesting because although it numbs you, it numbs the pain, you can still feel things, especially once time progresses. So for me, it took a couple of hours, but after a couple of hours, the numbness of everything starts to wear off. So I began to feel more things. So then I could start to feel the contractions. So when it came time to push, my epidural started to wear off a little bit. So I could completely feel when the contractions were coming. I could feel the pressure in my butthole, meaning that the baby was about to come. I could feel myself pushing, things like that. And that was very helpful because if you are completely numb, like if I had got the epidural right when it was time to push, I wouldn't have been able to feel myself pushing in that instance because it's way too fresh, way too numb. So my suggestion would be get the epidural a couple of hours before it's time to push, because you want to have the epidural work for the pain because it is hurtful, but also you want it to be worn off just enough to where you can actually feel your body spasming and you can feel the pressure so you can really do an adequate push. Now, so for this last misconception, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a misconception, but it was just an over glaring fear that I had that if I got an epidural, I'm automatically getting a C-section. And that's just from people fear mongering me online. A lot of the natural birth community girls, they will scare you into thinking that if you get an epidural, you're gonna absolutely have to get a C-section. Now, there are more risk when there comes to getting an epidural, and there is a higher chance of you having to get a cesarean, but that doesn't mean you have to get one. And the reason for people having an increased risk of having a C-section is because once you get the epidural, your contractions do slow down, so they have to give you Pitocin. And sometimes when they give you that Pitocin, your contractions will be a little bit too strong, and that'll cause the baby's heart rate to drop and things like that. Yes, that is all true. With anything, there are risks, and that's important to understand. But it's not so much so that I would advise everyone to not get an epidural. It's something that you have to be comfortable with, and if it's something that you feel like you need to do because you have a low pain tolerance, then do it. It is safe, it is regulated, and you're still 100% able to have a natural delivery. So I don't want people to be so scared of getting an epidural because they're going to get a C-section. Trust me, I was that person. I was like, I don't want to get it because I don't want to have a C-section and XYZ. But that's not true. You know what I'm saying? As long as everything else is going well, you will still be able to have a natural vaginal delivery. And let me just say this one thing before I get any trolls in the comments. Even if you were a person who had to get an epidural and ended up having a C-section, or you just had to get a C-section because XYZ, you're still 100% valid. You still gave birth. Okay, like having a C-section is not, I hate this like notion that people put on people or women that have a C-section, like all of a sudden you had a C-section, so you didn't give birth, you just went out the easy way. Like, girl, that is major surgery. But that's a whole nother video. I just had to put that out there. But anyways, I hope this video helped you guys if you are interested in getting an epidural. Of course, with anything medical related, make sure you guys consult your doctor, your midwife, your doula, all those people to make sure that this is a decision that works for you, your baby, your partner, XYZ. But I hope this video did help you guys and answered a few questions, because I know I didn't know what the hell I was getting into before I got into it. But with all that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and make sure you guys tune in next week for my next video.